Leslie, good evening.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. We just had an interesting conversation about the dangers of mixing up your traditions. And I remember when I first used to come along, you saying, no, we're Theravadan here, and be careful about the other traditions. And everybody says that, and I can see a bit of it, not that I really explore the others particularly, but I thought you might have something you could add to that for us.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between having an interest in the general subject and spiritual practices that you abide by. And you want your spiritual practices to be bound by a narrative that is coherent and consistent with your spiritual practices. And the thing is, there's many ways up the mountain. Okay, the top of the mountain is the same for everyone. Okay, fair enough. But the ways up can vary tremendously. And you can't really, say, for instance, you can't really bring in a Hindu Advaita Vedanta narrative to Vipassana, because there's a small problem with the self, which is a fairly big narrative issue. And so people get really confused, and there's this sort of mixture of sort of vague spiritual references and narratives, and there's no precision, there's no clarity. So that's obviously going to affect somebody's ability to fulfill their spiritual practices if they're confused between apparently conflicting narratives. So it makes sense to find the way that resonates with you, that makes sense to you, commit to that, and commit to the practices, commit to the narrative that surrounds it. It doesn't mean you can't explore other traditions, other Buddhist traditions, other non-Buddhist traditions. I have read, well, I won't say widely, or at least I haven't retained widely, but there is lots of interesting stuff in other traditions. But when I practice Buddhist, mindfulness. I practice Buddhist mindfulness of breathing. I did practice insight. When I was practicing insight, I was also reading occasionally Krishnamurti. Very different, but it was all grist for the mill. But when it came to specific practices and my the road that I was traveling down, I was very clear and didn't allow other traditions to interfere with my task. Because the point isn't about being well read and well versed in a whole variety of different traditions. The point is getting free of suffering, coming to a complete comprehension of the true nature of reality. And one of the things that happens is if you pick up lots of different traditions, you cherry pick, and you pick the nicest, ripest, juiciest cherries. You don't pick the mangy ones that don't appear attractive to you. So it means that people always retain that, if I can put it in inverted commas, selfish attitude towards the spiritual path, which is, I'll only accept what is comfortable for me to accept. And therefore, the path never gets trod, because you have to be willing to look at the things you don't want to look at. And so having a tradition, especially having a teacher in that tradition, and somebody who you respect and whose voice you will, and guidance you will listen to, will make all the difference. Because the ego, what we call the ego, is always trying to put us off in one way or another. And one of the subtle ways it can put us off completely is by giving us this laissez-faire, oh, you can look at all these traditions are equal, they're all equally worth, and we can dabble in all of them. Therefore, you never become proficient in any one of them, and the ego wins. Mm-hmm. And that is born of 20 years of talking to people and
Yeah,
trying to get
I
people
totally
to
get.
focus.
Yeah, I totally get that. And the group that I was in were very much of the same opinion. There was one thing I was wondering though. Around the corner from Bradford and Avon in Headington, there's the International Meditation Centre that does the 10-day insight silent retreats, and I did go on one of those and felt quite a big overlap technique wise. I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's
for
only
sure.
10 days. Yeah. So there
Look,
wouldn't be any harm, I guess, there. Not too many muddles.
But I've done 3 Goenka retreats, and they're from the same strand of Burmese Buddhism. And I know from doing the Goenka retreats, yes, there's crossover, but there's also substantial difference as well.
Right.
And again, I would say a consistency of approach, letting go of choice, and somebody buckling down and going, right, this is my chosen path. This is what I'm going to go with. Now, if somebody doesn't accept that, if they don't like that, idea, then fair enough. Good luck. Good luck. I would love everyone to realize freedom from suffering. But like I say, there are many subtle ways that the ego manages to fool us so that we don't transcend it.
Okay, well, thank you. That's fab. Thank you.
At least it was clear.
It was.
Who else has got it? I'm not going to pick up chat. If you've got a question, you're going to have to ask it, please. Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca. Come back, Rebecca. Where have you gone?
I think I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Good to see you.
And you, I had a question from that I put in the Q&A box. It was like whether you could talk a bit about the difference between sympathetic joy and loving kindness, and how to specifically practice sympathetic joy.
Okay, so loving kindness, when we practice loving kindness meditation, the emphasis, the way we narrate the person is based on their good qualities, things that we think are good about them, that are nice about them, and that engenders a friendly disposition towards them and makes then offering the sentiment of friendliness towards them that much easier. So you create the connection by thinking about the person and their good qualities. Now, it so happens that if you practice one of the 4 BrahmaVihara, in this case, metta, loving kindness, the other 3 come along for the ride. So you can't really fail. If you're practicing loving kindness, sympathetic joy will begin to emerge. So the other 3, for the record, the other 3 are compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So with sympathetic joy, generally in the round, in the worldly sense, we have sympathetic joy when good things happen to people, when they get the promotion, when they have a baby, when they buy a new house, when they win the lottery. Of course, we want to be very close to them when they win the lottery. We want to be very friendly with them then. But generally speaking, we go, oh, that's amazing, that's brilliant. And that's what the sympathetic joy is. It's like, oh, taking joy in your good fortune, not my good fortune, and not feeling, envy. So it's the counter to envy. So it's taking joy in other people's good fortune. Right, okay. But mudita, sympathetic joy as a spiritual practice, is focused not on their work so much on their worldly achievements, so much as their spiritual, the way they're developing spiritually. And so that you could say, for instance, you could factor in on the parami, and you could just run through the parami, and I bet you, whoever it is, you would find some aspect of the parami. They're generous, or they're kind. They put themselves out for others, and you can think of a couple of instances of that. So it's things which are their good fortune in terms of helping them develop their way to realize freedom from suffering. So it's sort of specifically mudita is that. So it's taking joy in the spiritual successes of others, but it does counter envy, because it is putting them before ourselves in terms of their successes. So I'd say in a nutshell, that's what mudita is. But it comes along for the ride if you practice loving kindness anyway. You can't help but start to feel good about their successes. So is it to do with, without being going into details, is it to do with envy? Is it envy, being envious of somebody else's success?
I could feel quite good about people's good qualities.
Yes.
And I can see them quite easy, but I get a bit annoyed when they get a new house or something.
But yes.
Because I think it's more like it's probably down to like comparison, because I think, well, I haven't got a new house.
Yes.
So I'd like to feel happy for them. I do see, I've got friends who, like, sympathetic joy just comes in abundance, just comes completely naturally. And if genuinely,
they're very strange people.
So yeah, and I'd like to
does it feel nice to make that comparison and feel that they're doing better than you? Does it lead to a sense of unburdening, a sense of peace?
It feels horrible.
Then why do you do it? Because that's the problem with narratives, is like they are habitual. When we create a story like that, it kind of defines our reality. Unless we're properly mindful and we understand this, it defines our reality, and then our world gets heavy, and we feel extraordinarily dissatisfied, and we don't recognize it's not the external situation at all, because actually you probably feel fine for them. It's more about the heaviness of that narrative, and not realizing that it's arbitrary, and that you could quite simply and easily, firstly, accepting that what you are thinking does not define reality, that you are actually no worse off for not having that thing, whatever that thing happens to be. It is illusory, and that what's real is what is unfolding now, and you're not in any loss now. You're not lacking now. It's just this idea of lack based on that comparison. And so it's realizing that you're playing a trick on yourself. You're imprisoning yourself through the belief, the absolute belief of that narrative as being fundamentally real. So if you're willing to accept that narratives do not define your reality, that takes some of the heaviness away. And then it's easier then to flip it into sympathetic joy. And this is something I with this choosing narratives and employing narratives strategically, you don't necessarily have to believe it 100%. you just say it mentally. You just go, yeah. And weirdly, the brain goes, or the mind goes, oh, okay. Oh, we're fine with them now. Okay, I thought we had an issue with them and life was really heavy, but no, it's a good day. Oh, okay. And it'll start giving you perceptions that reinforce that. So it's up to you. And that's what that's what, as a practice, why loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy are so powerful and so good.
So I don't necessarily have to sit down and sort of practice sympathetic joy.
You're making that not sound fun. I have to sit down and practice. No, do what comes. Does loving kindness? You said before, loving kindness comes quite naturally, even towards the person you might be feeling like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so if you've done the work at recognizing that, the comparison leads to the sense of heaviness and the sense of lack, and that's not pleasant. Okay, you don't have to solve that. You just let it be there, and it doesn't feel quite as heavy because you're looking at it and you're accepting it. And then when you practice loving kindness, practice some loving kindness towards them, because sympathetic joy comes along for the ride, and you get through it that way, and gradually you start to, it's just that you just become that little bit more elevated in understanding the nature of envious thoughts and the nature of sympathetic joy thoughts, and you just make intelligent choices based on your experience, and gradually what gets established is a more sympathetic outlook, without having to sort of do this miraculous thing of grinding yourself into a different shape.
Yeah.
Because
Great,
that's no
thank
fun
you.
at all. Good. That's no fun at all. Trying to fit yourself into a pattern you think you ought to be, rather than taking great interest in what kinds of habitual tendencies come up, and then playing with these ideas about how you can change the emphasis and so forth. It makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. So I think it was Mandy next. Mandy, hello.
Hi, Paul. Hello, everybody. Yes, I wrote my question, but you said you're not going to read, so I'm going to read it out loud. But I was just wondering, I just started to realize more and more that the people who are practicing Buddhism mostly are people with a certain kind of intellect. And I was wondering, how about the people who have more difficulties with that, or don't have this quality to reflect and to have learned from inside that much? And I was just wondering, how about that? Can you say something about that?
But isn't it the case? Is it?
To practice that is my question, really.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if I've understood the question, but my immediate thought, based on what you said, is that certain traditions will attract certain people. Certain sort of not personality types per se, but we all, to a lesser or greater degree, we all think sitting quietly in a chair with our eyes closed, ignoring each other, is the way to go. It's just like this quality that we share. We're contemplative by nature. I mean, rather than say, we all have a sort of same intellectual capacity, because I don't believe that to be true, because my teacher Alan just totally squashes me when it comes to intellectual power. But in terms of enjoying the contemplative, I've said before, I think that people who follow the Vipassana path, the insight path, I think that we are contemplative mystics. We're interested in truth, gnosis, and the contemplation isn't just thinking about stuff. It's the actual exploration of experience in order to come to see and comprehend things. But there are other paths, other traditions that don't have those qualities. They're very different paths. It might, for instance, it might be like a devotional path, and it might be like particular devotion to a teacher or something, and it's all predicated on that devotion, whereas we're more interested in contemplative reflection and insight. So at the end of the day, this does go back to Leslie's observation about being interested in different paths. It's like that. Those are two very different options. There's the option of contemplative reflection and insight, and then on the other hand, there's total devotion to the teacher no matter what. I don't think those two different traditions are going to appeal to the same sort of person. Does that help, Mandy? Have I got to the nub of the question?
Yeah, I'm trying to get what you're saying. If that, yeah. Well, it makes it still difficult for me to know to sometimes share things about the teaching and the practice.
It's a good thing that we're here then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good that we're doing this.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that is true, but it's, yeah, but I was just questioning, like, hey, some people maybe they do want it, but it's difficult, or you know, even the teaching is quite
Oh,
difficult to understand. So, yeah, no, well, it just
Listen, yeah, I mean that's a very good observation. This is something that I juggle with well, not constantly, but I reflect on regularly. Is like, have I got the right? Am I pitching it at the right level? If I pitched it at a different level, if I said, well, I'm not going to talk about the insight, the higher teaching so much, I'm going to emphasize the mundane path more, would we get more people coming along?
Mm-hmm.
And is that right or wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or is that for the best? Is it for the best for the center to adapt the way it presents the teaching in order to cater for the widest group of people possible?
Yeah, and it shouldn't be about the amount of people.
Or is it that we've actually got something quite unique here that does emphasize the higher teaching when other people, perhaps in Buddhism, aren't so much, and there isn't so much clarity around the insight path? Because that's one thing I've noticed whenever I have dabbled with the Theravada tradition in a more broader sense, there isn't the same clarity with regard to the higher teaching. So is it better that we stay small and committed to that higher aspect, or that we broaden it out to cater for the widest group of the widest, you know, bandwidth of interest? And the answer I always keep coming back to is I've got no idea, and I wouldn't know how to manipulate it to be any. I've only got this way of discussing it, so I'm just going to carry on doing this.
I understand.
And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, I wish you well and hope you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, I understand, Paul. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, there is a huge variety of, you know, degree of interest, and for some people, it's not about realizing the third noble truth at all. It's about social activism and all these various things. And I just think, well, you know, good luck to everyone. See you on the other side, and we'll just carry on. But for me, I just think that emphasizing the higher teaching, even if it means that some people won't get it, sort of thing, that it's such a rare opportunity for people to practice the higher teaching in earnest, that, you know, I in a sense, I just want to keep Alan and Jackie's legacy, because that's what they did. They told people you can do it. There are so many people, subtly or not so subtly, often very subtly, often unconsciously, spiritual teachers are telling people you can't realize the third noble truth. It's not possible. And we here say, no, you can. It is possible. And so that's why we emphasize the higher teaching, because it's the higher teaching that leads to that. Yeah. Good. Annie. Hello. Or you'll need to unmute now. There you go.
I've now got 3 questions. If I can try to encapsulate them. The third question: what is the higher teaching? Sorry if that's terribly ignorant. What is the higher teaching?
Not at all. So you've got 2 teachings essentially. You've got 2 noble eightfold paths. You've got the mundane eightfold path, which is the way my teacher sums up as the way to heaven.
Right.
So heaven in this lifetime and a heavenly rebirth. So that's all the things like keeping precepts, generating compassionate activities, developing loving kindness, you know, developing that spiritual outlook, which is inclusive and accepting and noble and all those kinds of things. All right, and that most spiritual teachings, well, all spiritual teachings will have that form in some way, shape or form. And then the Buddha's higher teaching is the way to realize nibbana. So it's realized going beyond just the mundane approach of just getting a better and better life, and gaining a transcendent comprehension of the truly empty, unbounded perfection of existence.
So this is the first time I've ever heard of this. That's really why. Okay, I don't know where you find it. Sorry, I mean, this isn't sort of in the Pali Canon. It is.
It's all in the Pali Canon. Absolutely.
So that would be where would you locate that in the Pali Canon, roughly?
I suggest that you just open up a book and just stick your finger in and just have a look.
All right. Well,
it might not be explicitly stated, but he does talk about it as being a higher teaching. He definitely does.
Okay,
Yeah.
I won't worry myself with that. So
Okay.
that's number one. Number two is well, I know this is a group situation here, but I do respect you as a teacher, Paul. I don't actually have a teacher. I live in Waltham Abbey, Essex. My very good friend, Martin Goodson, he's an ex-Rinzai Buddhist monk. He's a Rinzai monk. And I would welcome the opportunity, if I may, to have a session. Probably would have to be on Zoom or by telephone, to try to... Absolutely. Try to don't know how to find the right word for it.
Have a chat.
Well, I'd need more than that, really. You know, I mean, I spent my life.
More than a chat? What do you expect from me?
66 I am now, and it's, you know, I don't know how much time I've got left, frankly. So I know that I don't want to sound dramatic. It's just that, yeah, I think.
Annie, the insight path is the Buddha's higher teaching. The insight path is a wonderful, deeply profound exploration of what conscious experience really is.
And so I haven't got beyond daily life practice, really, Paul.
Yeah, anybody can do it. This is what I was saying. This is what I was saying before. It's like so many people actually subtly or unconsciously put people off and say, well, it's just not possible. But it is entirely possible. And you know, the next step would be for us to have a chat, and that can be over Zoom, or it can be over Facebook Live, or it can be, you know, FaceTime, or it can be over the phone, because yeah, Essex is quite a long way away, and we just have a chat about it, and you know, we can get to an understanding of what's required and what's going on, and just see how to take it forward.
That's fine. Thank you. Then the third question, and this is just probably a bit frivolous. Loving kindness. I really can't envisage a time when I can feel loving kindness for scammers. I mean, I know it's an unfortunate karmic situation I believe they're in.
Yes, very much so.
I mean,
yeah. Okay, don't do loving kindness towards scammers then.
Right, good.
There comes a point with loving kindness. Do it because in a formal practice, you've got doing it towards yourself, towards a respected person, towards a friend, a neutral person, and then what they call an enemy. But that can be just somebody that you really love, that you just had a bit of an argument with. You know, it doesn't have to be your sworn enemy, because that can be very difficult to summon up loving kindness to a real enemy. And then gradually, as the practice evolves, as it gets deeper, as the actual feeling of loving kindness starts to seep through, it kind of gathers a momentum, and you find yourself finally able to direct it towards scammers. Not initially, but gradually over time. Like I said, I think in a recent Monday night Zoom meeting, we don't have to be Jesus. We're just settling everything down and realizing that all the people around us, all the people we know, do indeed have benevolent qualities. And gradually through that practice, we start, and in the books it even talks about, you know, don't aim for loving getting the feeling of loving kindness towards the person you have difficulty with, but just aim for equanimity towards them. Okay, all right, fair enough. Their karma, as you've quite rightly pointed out, they're doing things which are going to rebound on them badly. You can't get away with it. Nobody can escape not even the Buddha could escape the law of karma. Yeah. So if you can reach a point of equanimity with regard to them, that's in your interest, because essentially what it's doing, it's taking away the burden from you. Because whilst you're saying these scammers are terrible people, you are actually burdening yourself. You're imprisoning yourself. So
thanks very much. So as regards the next step with the as you say, having a chat, am I to call in the afternoon your telephone number, or
yeah, you can email. We'll need to book something in, so you can email or just call the centre after 2 p.m. weekdays.
Yeah, so that's the email address that I've got. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. Good speaking to you. Rakesh. Hello.
Hello, Paul. Hi. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. The Brahma Vihara's related question again. This is. I once heard, and this may have come from the Visuddhimagga, but I once heard that each of the Brahma Viharas have like what's termed as a near enemy. I can only remember two of them. I think for compassion, it's pity, and for equanimity, it's indifference. I just wanted your view, your thoughts on, what is the difference between equanimity and indifference? How would you word that?
Yeah, so indifference doesn't care. Whereas equanimity, as I was saying, talking with Annie there, it was saying, well, these scammers, they're actually performing actions which will rebound on them. And so the compassion comes out, which is saying, that they're going to experience painful feelings because of this. And then the equanimity says, well, that's the nature of reality. Our actions do have results, and we all fare on according to our deeds. And so the equanimity comes out, which is saying, I don't have to be passionate with regard to equanimity. It's the absence of that passion. I don't have to be passionate about these people and what they've done. I can retain my even-mindedness, whilst at the same time still being open to the fact that they're human beings and they suffer. Yeah. So it's a really powerful thing, so essentially with the Brahma Vihara, you go through the metta, which is finding reasons to like somebody, essentially. And then you're going into compassion, which is recognizing the inherent suffering that they go through. And then it's going to sympathetic joy, which is going, oh yeah, but they're doing things to try to resolve the problem of suffering. And it's focusing on the effective, efficient, morally skillful things that they do and taking joy in that. And then you get into the equanimity of saying, yeah, but they're a mixed bag. Yeah, they do these things which are efficient and effective and wholesome, but they also do these things which are inefficient, ineffective, unwholesome. And it's recognizing, yeah, we all fare on according to our deeds. So therefore, I don't have to try to control the world anymore, because everyone is faring on according to their deeds. And what we see in the world around us is the actions of the law of karma in action and the kind of results that accrue. So you get this lovely sense of equanimity, even-mindedness, without closing off and becoming indifferent. So you're not closing your heart, essentially.
Yeah, thank you.
Does that?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And the beautiful thing is, I was saying to Rebecca, if you pick up one, the other three come along for the ride. So as long as someone's practicing loving kindness, then that equanimity, that evenness of mind will develop over time. Because I totally get it. It's like some people's behavior, you just wonder, you really do wonder how on earth anyone could act in those ways. And they're blind. They're ignoring the way life works, and therefore they're falling into this terrible samsaric trap, thinking that they're, in the case of the scammers, thinking that they're somehow, stealing a march on everyone else, not realizing that the real result of that is an increase in pain and distress. So,
yeah, and I think from that point of view, when in terms of the scammers, you can actually, that reflection can actually give rise to compassion, can't it? Really.
absolutely. And that's what we're aiming for, because we just want to retain that openness of spirit, an open heart. Whereas the indifference is going, I don't care about that person. So, and that opens you up to the other, the far enemy of compassion, which is cruelty.
Mm.
Yeah, where you actually want to do that person harm because of what they've done. So, yeah, it's very powerful, very powerful.
Thanks.
Liz. Thanks, Rakesh. Liz, hello. You need to unmute, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
done it.
I didn't need to say.
Just carrying on with that, really. Could you say a little bit more? You're talking about the way that the individual who's doing the whichever Brahma Vihara, what sort of softens the mind and opens the heart to the other person. But could you explain a bit more about how it impacts on the person doing the Brahma Vihara, doing the practice? Because I certainly think that all the years that I've been meditating, I have actually changed as a person in my relationships, in my approach to other people.
Instead of me talking about it, why don't you talk about it? In
That's
what way?
it, really. Well, in the way that you're talking about it, it softens our thinking about other people in various ways. That it actually, the end result seems to be that it softens you in a particular way as well, and changes the way you approach people.
Yes.
And you think about them.
Yes.
And it doesn't sort of lessen it, but it changes it. For example, I'm not as sharp with people as I used to be.
We're all pleased about that, Liz.
I'm sure. No, but
that's the thing. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It softens your journey through the human realm.
Yeah.
Because the human realm's tough. I don't know if anyone's noticed.
Yeah.
The human realm is a really tough call. We've done really well getting it this far. So one of the things I think, it comes back to the whole thing about the narratives that you choose. That if you choose the narrative of thinking about somebody's good qualities, about how they suffer, about what they're, the kinds of ways they're overcoming suffering, which are skillful, and you become equanimous with the ups and downs of their fortunes, it's bringing you into alignment with unfolding reality. Whereas when you're in opposition to, when you're thinking about somebody's bad qualities, when you don't wish them well, you are at right angles to the flow. And life judders about and is sharp and is painful and is difficult. And often, we've all come on a journey with it, I guess, that we've gradually realized that you can actually change the narrative. And as you do, you're choosing to bring your narrative in line with the way things really are, more in line with the way things really are. And so that makes life's journey a lot simpler. It makes it a lot more pleasant. It makes it softer. Life seems to work out. The patterns of life seem to things just seem to work out so much more easily. There's like, it's almost like the apparently separate universe is just resonating with what you're doing mentally and emotionally and psychologically, and reflects it. And so you find that things work out that much, things go that much more smoothly. They seem to work out that much more easily. And you've paid the price. You've paid the price, because practicing loving kindness is letting go of that egotistical, I am the most important person, that solipsistic sort of, I am the most important person in the universe. Everything that happens in the universe relates to me all the time, and it's putting that down and emphasizing the other. And the more we do that, the more into the flow we find ourselves, and that the universe reflects that.
Yeah.
So it's tremendously powerful and profound.
And even just changing your attitude to, say, the scammers in the way that you think about them during that practice means that you can have an attitude then where you see them in a much more not related to me kind of way.
Yes, it doesn't mean for a moment we agree with their actions,
Yeah.
but it's just going, yeah, underneath those, you know, it's judging the action, not the person.
Yeah.
It's going, well, the action is unskillful. That's going to cause them suffering. That leads to a compassionate outlook towards them.
Yeah.
Because you realize that, yeah, we are all reflections of each other, and we all experience, we all experience the ebb and flow of fortune, and our fate patterns and so forth. And so you soften.
And it can, you change. It changes.
You soften. Well, you're getting more in touch with what the human condition really is. Well, that's one of the things with compassion meditation I find extraordinarily powerful, that it's putting you in touch with, really, even if you don't know the details, the specific details of somebody's life, you still understand that, they experience grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair. They experience the unwanted, they lose the wanted, the loved, and they can't get what they want, and they experience that frustration, and you go, oh, they're not so very different from me after all.
Thank you.
So it's making us, bringing us into the human realm properly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Ellen.
Hi, Paul.
Hello.
I'm gonna bounce also onto this conversation, and what it's reminded me of is in my practice, when I can remember times when trying to deal with someone who's more difficult and doing loving kindness towards them, I get the sense of what compassion is, but what I label what can come up in me is pity. And it seems to have a different tone, and what I notice is it's like, well, aren't I more superior than them? And then I'm negative at myself, and then I shut it all down. So my question is, can you comment on feeling pity for someone else, and in what way does that compare to these other positive practices we're trying to do?
Yeah, again, it's putting me as the center of the universe, isn't it? That their actions, their actions relate directly to me. So it is self-pity. It can take many forms, but it is pity directed. It is about me. It's not about that person. So even if it does lead to a sense of superiority, like spiritual superiority, then it's still about me, isn't it? Whereas when it's compassion, it's about them. It's about the actions, the unskillful actions that they're performing that are going to cause them pain, and the grief and the sorrow related to, say maybe it is a scammer, maybe it works. Maybe they, in the short term, they appear to have got stolen a march and got ahead and unfairly. But what is the ultimate destination for somebody who does that? They're going to experience the opposite perception of what they want. They're going to be given the perception of being without. So their behavior is starting from a position of being without. They probably justify it by saying, well, they've got loads of stuff, I haven't got any stuff, that's not fair, because they don't reflect on the nature of action and result. And they go, well, the way you equalize it is I just go and get it from them. And they probably presume that the person that they're going to take it from has also got it through ill-gotten ways as well, because that's what we do. We project. We project our own attitudes onto other people. So they probably feel fully justified. So they're starting from a perception of lack, and they want to redress that by unskillfully taking it from other people, by deceit. As a consequence of that, what are they going to be more aware of ultimately? They're going to be terrified of being deceived, and they're going to experience a reinforcement of the sense of lack. And the selfish response is, well, I wouldn't fall for that. I'm a good person. I wouldn't do that. Look at them. Look at those terrible people. But the compassionate side of things is to say, yeah, it's going to be pretty painful. That's going to be pretty awful. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and because also this blends into the equanimity, because the equanimity comes to your rescue, which says, well, I don't have to be passionate about it. I can retain my humanity towards this individual, knowing that they're going to experience painful results. And that's okay. Because that's the other aspect of equanimity, which is something that the world does not currently understand, which is things are just. We all do fare on according to our deeds, that it's uneven, but it is fair if you take the long lens view of life. And that breeds this equanimity of saying, yeah, some people have more and some people have less, because people fare on according to their deeds. And so if you see somebody who does have the big house, who does have the beautiful husband or the beautiful wife, and does have the latest Tesla car, and does have, did I just add that one in? I think I added that one in. Does have the beautiful kids and everything, and the swimming pool and everything else. And you think, wow, they must have done something. Either they've gained it all through ill-gotten means, in which case they have to experience the results, or they've got it through the results of their good karmic behavior, in which case they are entirely entitled to it. So I might have gone slightly off the point, Ellen. so essentially, it does teach us in a mundane level. The Brahma Vihara teaches that life is fine as it is, despite appearances. And the problem is you've got the counter narratives coming from the world telling you through the news and everything, and all the activism and everything, telling you that everything is wrong. And we've got to do this, and we've got to do that, and we've got to do the other, and we've got to do this. Whereas the Brahma Vihara are telling us, no, actually, in the mundane scheme of things, people are faring on according to their deeds. And does that help us remain open and soft and yielding? And so I think in terms of what's that German word, Schadenfreude? This sort of taking joy in other people's misfortune sort of stuff, or becoming sort of a bit conceited about one's own spiritual acumen compared with these other people. Well, then that's something that you've just got to confront. That's something you just got to acknowledge.
No, absolutely.
And if you do acknowledge it, you realize it's not me. It is not a defining feature of who I am. It is just a habitual behavior. That makes it then easier to accept that it's there, and then transform it
and watch it go away. Okay, thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Owen. Wow. Any more? Has anyone got any other questions, observations they'd like to make? Doesn't have to be about the Brahma Vihara. It could be about other things too. Dave.
Hi, Paul. I was just thinking about what Annie said about this difference between the higher teaching, and it's something which didn't really, I thought it was a really sort of good question, because it took me sort of 20 years to kind of understand the difference. And I sort of thought, well, because the Abhidhamma is described as the higher teaching, and that is all about the analysis of experience into the aggregates. And and if you then go back to the Pali Canon, that if you have suttas which are dealing with the aggregates, that is the higher teaching, but it doesn't actually say it's a higher teaching, but I think that's what it refers to. Is that right?
But does it help? Does it help making that distinction?
I think for me, it actually helped me to understand that the insight path was the observation of the aggregates. And when I was observing the aggregates, then I was performing the higher teaching. Yes. And when I was doing loving kindness, I was doing the pathway to heaven. So yes. it did help to clarify almost kind of what you're doing with insight is you're setting it up to observe, the aggregates and the fact they're transient. So yeah, I did actually find it quite helpful.
Yes, yes, I agree absolutely, because a lot of people, because it is difficult. You sit down to meditate, you close your eyes. There is the assumption that it's all about experiencing calm states, or bliss, or becoming spiritually elevated, sort of like losing the sense of the physical and going more into the mind and the mental world and the bliss that's there. And absolutely it is. And so it really helps to have this distinction, which is to say, like, at the point when you stop trying to get into ever deeper states and you start to note the nature of states to arise and pass away, then you've gone from the mundane teaching, the way to heavenly states, into the higher teaching, which is more detached, which is about the transcendent understanding of the nature of all states, and the components that go to make up all states, the aggregates. And so once you've established that clear, even today I was talking to somebody for whom it's been coming along quite a long time, and we're just at the point where because really there is this rite of passage for meditators, that they're getting perhaps beyond the hindrances, they're getting into calm states, and then they're going, yeah, but what now? What do I do now? What am I supposed to do now? And that's where the teacher really helps. That's where having the guidance really helps, because the teacher can then establish this difference and clearly defining that if you want to go into concentration and the jhanas, that's blissful. There is a temporary emancipation that comes from doing that, but it's always transient. It's still samsara. Or you can take the insight path, and that's the Buddha's higher teaching, which is taking you beyond jhanas, beyond gaining ever deeper states of heaven, and taking you on the path which will free you entirely from samsara. Yeah, so it's just a way of establishing that clear dichotomy. But they are the same teaching. It's the mundane teaching is the foundation, which then allows for the transcendent exploration.
Thank you.
Does that help, Dave?
Right, thanks.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah, do you want to say something?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi there. Yeah, I just following on from that, I remember the sutta. I don't know the name of it, but I am so glad that Orkana does teach the higher teaching. And there was the sutta where I think it was on his deathbed, a king who the Buddha had taught for many, many years, King Pasenadi, actually cried because he finally heard about the aggregates. And why didn't I hear about this before? And he was told you weren't ready to hear it, but he actually cried. And, having lived in Thailand, all of the teaching that the common people get, the normal everyday teaching, is the mundane teaching, and it serves a great purpose. Yeah, it's like the social work. They are the social centers of each village, and it is a wonderful basis, and most people are genuinely pretty happy. And only those who seek out to know more, and anyone can, will then go and find a teacher, and anyone will point and say, yeah, there's a teacher in that monastery over, and that's...
Oh, we've lost Sarah.
There's only a handful teaching at any one time, and very few in English. So hence, find those who you can. So thanks, Paul.
The couple of points there. The first one is like the Buddhist higher teaching is announced in the first noble truth. Birth is suffering, old age, decay, death is suffering, grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair, union with the unloved, separation from the loved, unable to get what one wants, is all suffering. And then it continues, the 5 groups subject to grasping are suffering, and those are the aggregates. So he's announced it in the first noble truth. It's right there, and it permeates all the way through the other 3. But yeah, perhaps it isn't quite as explicitly stated. And the other point I was going to make was, yeah, like there is plenty of Buddhism available in our country for all levels of interest. And, you know, so if somebody doesn't want, there's even another meditation center or a group in Bradford and Avon practicing Theravadan Buddhism. And there was a chap from the forest tradition, a monk from the forest tradition, living there for a couple of weeks. That's just across the river. So it's all available. And so if somebody finds that the higher teaching is not something that grabs them, and you know, I've had people say to me, I just don't get it. And I think, well, okay, fair enough. You know, they go and they find something which is more suitable for them. But, you know, so if the emphasis elsewhere is more on the mundane and the social aspect, absolutely fair enough. And if somebody wants the higher teaching, it's available to them, you know. So yeah, turns out everything's fine. Everything is as it should be, you know. And if it just doesn't fit for somebody, then they don't have to pursue it. And for a few people in every generation, they are ready, as you said, they are ready. They want it. Yeah, they've had enough life experience to know that the way to heaven is beautiful, produces amazing results. You get to experience heaven, and then you're ejected again. And you have to come back to the scheme of things and learn some more lessons. So eventually somebody gets enough life experience where they go, I want to get off the mouse's wheel now. I want to stop chasing that bit of cheese once and for all, because I never seem to finally get what I want. And that's going back to the first noble truth again. Unable to get what I want. That perennial, deep existential frustration with never finally being at peace. So, well, we've been chatting over for an hour now, so I think we're time to stop and go and do something else, I think.
Thank you, Paul.
One thing about in our literature, like our diary page online and in our newsletter, it was saying that there was another live stream next week, another meeting like this next week. I've cancelled that because it's too much. I've got a workshop on Saturday, and then I've got a silent retreat the next week. So I've cancelled that. So the next Monday online meeting will be the 5th of June. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Roland. Nice to see you.
And you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
Paul
you.
and Dave.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Paul. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
See you all again soon.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Paul.